I never thought one stupid lie would cost me everything I thought I wanted, and hand me everything I never knew I needed. It started the way most disasters start, with panic, with my ex-boyfriend's smug face, with my mouth moving faster than my brain could catch up, and with the most dangerous woman in the city standing 2 feet behind me, close enough that I could feel the cold off her like she carried winter inside her chest. I said it without thinking. She's my girlfriend. 3 words. That was all it took. And the look on Marcus's face when Elena Vasquez stepped up beside me, her hand finding the small of my back like it had always lived there, like she had always been mine and I had always been hers, was almost worth what came after. Almost. But that was just the beginning, and I had absolutely no idea what I had just done. Chapter 1. The Lie That Started Everything. I had been avoiding Marcus Chen for 6 weeks. 6 weeks since he showed up at my apartment with a box of my things and a speech he had clearly rehearsed. Something about how we wanted different things and how he needed someone who matched his energy and how he really hoped we could stay friends. I had stood there holding a cold cup of coffee, listening to him dismantle 2 years of my life in 12 minutes. And then I had said, "Okay, sure, totally understand," and shut the door very quietly behind him, because I was raised to be polite even when I was falling apart. 6 weeks of polite falling apart. And then he showed up at the Meridian. The Meridian was not the kind of place I normally went. It was the kind of place that had no prices on the menu and a dress code enforced by a man named Gerard who looked like he bench-pressed small buildings for fun. My coworker Priya had dragged me there for her birthday, insisting I needed to leave my apartment and be a human person again. And I had agreed because I was tired of my own ceiling. I was standing at the bar waiting for Priya's cocktails when I felt someone beside me. Mia. His voice. Of course it was his voice. I turned and there was Marcus, looking impossibly relaxed in a jacket that probably cost more than my rent, and beside him was a woman who looked like the human embodiment of a magazine cover. Tall, copper hair, smile like she had been told her whole life that she was the most interesting person in any room she entered and had simply believed it. "Mia, this is Sophia," Marcus said, and there was something in his voice, something that sounded dangerously like pride. "We've been seeing each other for about 2 months. 2 months. I did the math immediately and hated myself for doing it. "It's great to finally meet you," Sophia said, extending her hand. "Marcus talks about you." I shook her hand. I smiled. I was so polite. And then Marcus did the thing that broke me. He looked at me with those familiar eyes and said, gentle and condescending in the exact same breath, "How are you doing? Are you seeing anyone?" And I felt it. The pity. Dressed up as concern, decorated with good manners, but pity all the same. The kind of look that says, I have moved on to something new and wonderful, and I need to know you are okay so I can feel good about that. My mouth opened. I do not know what I intended to say. What came out was, "Actually, yes, she's right here." I turned. There was a woman standing behind me at the bar. I had registered her peripherally when I arrived, the way you register a piece of architecture, something built so precisely that it reconfigures the space around it. She was tall, dark-haired, wearing black the way most people wear armor. Her eyes were the color of deep water, the kind you cannot see the bottom of. She held a glass of something amber and regarded me with an expression I could not read at all. I had never seen her before in my life. She was looking at me like she was deciding something. "She's my girlfriend," I said. The silence lasted approximately 1 second, and then Elena Vasquez stepped forward, her hand settling at the small of my back with absolute authority, and said to Marcus in a voice that had no warmth in it at all, "I don't believe we've met." Marcus shook her hand. He looked slightly off balance in a way I had never seen before, and some wretched part of me was deeply satisfied by that. They exchanged 4 sentences. I remember none of them because my entire nervous system was occupied with the weight of her hand on my back and the absolute insanity of what I had just done. Marcus and Sophia moved away eventually, something about finding their table. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in several minutes. Elena Vasquez removed her hand from my back. She looked at me, and what she said was not what I expected. "You have 30 seconds to explain that before I lose interest." I explained in probably less than 30 seconds, voice very low, the whole stupid, humiliating story. The breakup, the 6 weeks, the pity in his eyes, the words coming out before I could stop them. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "He doesn't deserve it," she said finally. "I know." "And you know who I am?" It wasn't a question, and that was when I realized why something about her had felt like a landmark, like a fact about the city I lived in. Elena Vasquez. I had seen her name in the business pages, in the kind of articles that hedge their language carefully, fingers in every industry in the city, old money and new power, and a last name that made certain people very quiet in certain rooms. I knew who she was, and I had just told Marcus Chen she was my girlfriend. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'll fix it. I'll go back and tell him I made a mistake. Don't." I stopped. Her eyes were on Marcus across the room, something calculating moving behind them. "He's going to spend the rest of tonight wondering about you," she said. "Let him." She picked up her glass, took a sip, and then she said, still not quite looking at me, "If you want to make it convincing, be here Friday, 8 o'clock. Then she walked away. I stood at the bar holding 2 cocktails that had gone slightly warm, my heart doing something completely unreasonable in my chest, and thought about how this was either the worst thing I had ever done or the beginning of something I did not have language for yet. I should have left. I should have found Priya, told her what happened, gone home, buried myself in my couch, and never thought about Elena Vasquez again. But I had never been good at doing what I should. And something told me that walking away from her would be a kind of loss I hadn't earned yet. I didn't know then how right that feeling was. I had absolutely no idea what was coming. Chapter 2, Friday at 8. I almost didn't go. I stood in front of my closet for 45 minutes on Friday evening, having a full and complete argument with myself about the absolute rationality of simply not going. I could text Priya. Priya would talk me down. Priya would remind me that sane adult women do not show up to fake date the most powerful and probably most dangerous woman in the city just because they panicked at a bar and told a lie. Priya would be right. I went anyway. I wore the black dress I bought for my company's last gala and never wore again. The one with the neckline that my mother called elegant and Priya called lethal. I told myself it was armor. I told myself I was walking into this with full awareness and 0 illusions. The Meridian looked different on a Friday. Fuller, louder. The kind of beautiful chaos that has a budget. Gerard at the door looked at me, looked down at something on his clipboard I hadn't seen him consult before, and said, "Ms. Reyes, right this way." Ms. Reyes. She had put my name on a list. Elena was already there. A corner booth, the kind that is less a table and more a small private room, curved leather and low light, and a view of the whole floor. She was looking at her phone when I arrived, and she didn't look up immediately, and in that 3-second window before she acknowledged me, I had time to notice that she was somehow more striking than I remembered, and that this was genuinely inconvenient. She looked up. Something moved across her face, too quick to name. "You came," she said. I said I would. People say a lot of things. I sat down across from her. She studied me the way I imagined she studied contracts, looking for the clause that would cost her something. It should have been uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable. But underneath the discomfort was something else, something that felt like being taken seriously, and I had apparently been starved for that without knowing it. "Rules," she said, setting her phone down. "If we are doing this." "We're doing this? You're here, aren't you?" It was not a question. I said nothing. "Rule 1, she said. "No one outside this booth knows it isn't real. Not your friends, not your coworkers, especially not the man from Monday night. Priya would never, not your friends." I closed my mouth. "Rule 2, public appearances when I need them. My world is full of people who pay attention to who is beside me and what it means. You being there says something. I need control over what it says." "What does it say?" She looked at me for a moment. "That I have chosen someone, which means I am unavailable, which removes a certain category of problem I have grown tired of managing." I considered that. "And rule 3? Don't lie to me." She picked up her wine glass. "About anything. You can play a role in public, but in private, I want to know who you actually are." I wasn't sure what to do with that. "Okay," I said. "My rules too, then." One eyebrow, almost imperceptible. "No one tells me what to do," I said. "I'll do the public things. I'll play the role. But I'm not an employee, and I'm not going to be managed. If I'm uncomfortable, I'll say so. If something doesn't work for me, I'll say so." The silence stretched. "Fair," she said. We ate dinner. That part surprised me, that there was dinner, that it was the kind of dinner where the food arrived without being ordered because she ate there often enough that they simply knew. We talked. Not small talk, something more textured than that. She asked about my work. I was a translator, 3 languages, freelance since I left the agency 2 years ago. And she listened with the specific quality of attention that feels like being taken apart and cataloged. Not unkindly. I asked about her. "You know about me," she said. "I know the public version." Something changed in her expression. "That's the only version there is." "I don't believe that." She looked at me. A long look. "You're going to be a problem," she said. But she didn't say it like a warning. She said it like something she had already accepted. When I left that night, her car took me home, a detail I hadn't agreed to and didn't argue with because I was tired and my feet hurt and the leather interior smelled faintly of that same cold winter and cedar scent she carried. Her driver did not make conversation. I watched the city move past the windows and tried to sort out what exactly I was feeling. Not what I expected. That was all I could confirm. When I got inside, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't have saved. One word, no punctuation. Saturday. I stared at it for a while. Then I saved the number. Then I went to sleep smiling, which I told myself meant absolutely nothing at all. I was already so wrong. Chapter 3. Her World. Saturday turned out to mean a charity gala for a children's hospital foundation, where Elena was apparently a primary donor. The kind of event that had ice sculptures and string quartets and enough old money in one room to fund a small country. I wore borrowed Priya earrings and the same black dress and spent 20 minutes before the car arrived telling myself I was calm. I was not calm. She was waiting in the lobby of her building. Not the same building as the bar, a different one, residential, the kind with a marble entrance and a doorman who nodded at her like she was weather, something you acknowledged and stepped aside for. She wore deep navy, sharp and structured, and something small and involuntary happened in my chest when she turned and saw me. "You look," she started. "Don't," I said. She paused. "I was going to say appropriate." "Oh." I felt my face do something I hoped she didn't notice. "Thank you." She held out her arm. I took it. The gala was its own education. Elena moved through that room the way water moves through a landscape, finding every crack, every channel, every point of least resistance and using it. People came to her, not the other way. Important people, I could tell by the way the crowd shifted when they approached, by the way conversations around us quieted just slightly to listen. And I was beside her. Her hand found mine at some point during the first hour, not dramatically, just a quiet claiming, fingers lacing through mine while she spoke to a silver-haired man about a development project in the East Quarter. I focused on breathing normally. I focused on the gala, on the crystal glasses and the low lights and the string quartet playing something I should have recognized but couldn't name. I was very aware of her thumb moving slowly across my knuckles. At some point, she leaned close to say something about the man we were about to speak to, context I needed, and her breath was warm against my temple, and I understood then, with a clarity that was almost inconvenient, that I was in significant trouble. Because this was supposed to be simple. This was supposed to be uncomplicated. She pulled back enough to look at me and said quietly, "You're doing well." "I'm terrified," I said honestly. "I know." And then, so quietly I almost missed it, "So am I." I looked at her. She had already looked away. Smooth, controlled, like the words hadn't happened, but they had happened. And I held them all the way through the rest of the gala, through the car ride home, through the door of my apartment, and into the quiet of my own space. So am I. Elena Vasquez was afraid of something, and she had told me. I had no idea what to do with a woman like her being afraid. I had no idea what to do with the fact that finding out made her feel more real to me than anyone had in a very long time. What I knew was this: something had shifted, and I couldn't shift it back. I wasn't sure I wanted to. Chapter 4. Cracks. 3 weeks in, and the lines were already blurring in ways I was pretending I didn't notice. She texted. Not about the arrangements, not about upcoming appearances. Just texts. A photo of a book she thought I'd find interesting. A question about something I'd mentioned at dinner. Once, at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, a single sentence. What do you know about 17th century Portuguese maritime trade routes? Because she had been reading something and hit a word she wanted to understand, and apparently I was the person she thought of. I knew a lot about 17th century Portuguese maritime trade routes. We talked for 2 hours. I told Priya none of this. Priya was not stupid. Priya had been watching me with the specific expression she wore when she was collecting evidence and waiting for me to reach my own conclusions. She asked no questions. She brought extra coffee to our Thursday lunches. She was, in the particular language of best friendship, being patient with me. The fourth official appearance was a dinner at a restaurant that was technically not open to the public, some private members situation with 6 tables and a chef who apparently cooked for 2 heads of state. Elena was meeting associates. Business, she'd told me. I'd said I'd be there. What she hadn't told me was that one of the associates would be a man named Dorian Park, who was very handsome and extremely interested in Elena, and who spent approximately the first 40 minutes of dinner making this interest quietly clear in the way of someone who considers themselves subtle but is not. I noticed. I also noticed the exact way Elena's jaw tightened fractionally each time he spoke to her. At some point during the 3rd course, Dorian said something about a resort in Monaco, a trip, a small group, how Elena should join them, directed at her exclusively in a way that made it clear the invitation did not extend to me. Elena opened her mouth. I put my hand over hers on the table. She went still. We have plans that week, I said pleasantly to Dorian. But thank you. Dorian looked at our hands, looked at my face, looked at Elena. Elena looked at me. Her expression was unreadable and completely focused on my face, and something in it made the back of my neck warm. Of course, Dorian said, and changed the subject. In the car afterward, she didn't speak for the first several minutes. I watched the city. I wondered if I had overstepped. I was deciding how to open the conversation when she said, very quietly, "You didn't have to do that." I know. You also didn't have to enjoy it that much. I looked at her. She was looking out her own window, but there was something in the line of her mouth that was almost a smile. He was rude, I said. He was. And you didn't want to go. I didn't. So. She was quiet for a moment. Thank you, she said. And then, like she had to make room for it, like it cost something. Mia. She had not said my name like that before, not with that particular weight. I turned back to my window. My heart was doing the thing it had been doing more and more frequently in her company, the thing I was actively not naming, and the city lights blurred slightly at the edges, and I thought about how I had walked into this with full awareness and 0 illusions. I had no awareness left. I was full of nothing but illusions about what this was. And the worst part, the part I couldn't outrun no matter how I arranged the logic of it, was that I didn't think they were illusions anymore. Something was coming. I could feel it the way you feel a storm before it breaks, and I had no idea if I was ready. Chapter 5. The Truth Underneath. It was her that broke first. I wouldn't have expected that. I had constructed Elena Vasquez in my mind as something that did not break, something that held its shape under pressure the way stone does. But that was before I knew about the migraines that made her close all the blinds in the middle of the afternoon. Before I knew she kept exactly 1 photo on her desk and turned it face down when she was in a bad mood. Before I knew, she had a sister she hadn't spoken to in 3 years over something she wouldn't name, and that this silence cost her something she also wouldn't name. I knew these things because 5 weeks in, she had stopped pretending she was only the public version. I didn't ask. She just told me, in pieces. The way you let water out of a dam, controlled, just enough that the pressure doesn't build to breaking, not realizing that you've already started the flood. It was a Sunday. I had come over because she'd texted something about a translation question, a document for a European acquisition, Italian legal language that was giving her team trouble. I came over, I helped. We sat on her terrace with the city 40 floors below, and she poured wine and didn't go back inside. She told me about her father. She told me how the business had been built on his terms, and she had inherited the terms along with the business, and how she had spent 15 years making it hers instead, which meant 15 years of being harder than anyone expected and colder than she had started out being, and how somewhere in the process she had misplaced the difference between the armor and the person wearing it. She said this looking at the city. She did not look at me. "Why are you telling me this?" I said, and it wasn't quite a question. "Because you asked me what the private version was," she said. "First night at the bar. You said there wasn't one." "I was wrong." A pause. "You're the first person in a long time who made me want to be wrong about that." The night was warm and the city lights were doing what they always did, turning ordinary air into something almost beautiful. And I looked at her profile and understood something I had been avoiding understanding. I was in love with her. Not falling, not approaching, already there. Already completely, irreversibly there. I set my wine glass down. I turned toward her. "Elena." She turned, and whatever she saw in my face made something change in hers. The careful neutrality she wore like a second skin slipped, just fractionally, and underneath it was something open and searching and a little bit afraid. "This isn't fake," I said. A long moment. "I know," she said. "For me, it's not fake for me." Another moment. Her eyes were very dark in the low light. "Mia." My name in her voice, careful. "I don't know how to do this, whatever this is." "Neither do I. I'm not easy. I know that. I'll get it wrong. So will I." She looked at me for a long time, the kind of looking that takes stock, the kind that is honest with itself about what it finds. Then she reached out and tucked a piece of hair behind my ear, a gesture so quiet and unguarded that it rearranged something fundamental in my chest and said, "Then we'll figure it out." I leaned forward and kissed her, soft, asking, and she kissed me back. And it was nothing like the performance we had been giving the world for 5 weeks. It was the thing underneath the performance, the true version, the one that had been building since a Friday night at 8 o'clock when I had shown up half terrified and told myself I had 0 illusions. I had been so completely wrong about that, but I'd never been so grateful to be wrong about anything in my life. Chapter 6. When it broke. The problem with real things is that they can break in real ways. It happened at week 7. I found out through Priya, which was its own particular sting. Priya had seen something, an article, the kind of article that lived in the business and gossip overlap zone where Elena's name sometimes appeared. A photograph. Elena at an event 3 days ago, one I hadn't been at, not an official appearance, nothing I'd been told about, with a woman, close. The photo said things. I sat with the article open on my phone for a long time. Then I texted Elena. Not accusatory, just, "Can you talk?" She called immediately. "What's wrong?" she said. No greeting. That was how she was, direct to the point that sometimes felt like impact. I saw the photo. Silence. "Mia, I'm not angry," I said, and meant it, mostly. "I just need to know what we actually are. Because I thought—" I stopped. I thought it had changed. But maybe I was reading it wrong. Maybe I need to understand what the rules actually are. The silence on her end was different from her usual silences. Heavier. "Her name is Aria," Elena said. "We have a history. She came to the event. She approached me. I stayed too long because I didn't manage it well, and someone took a photo and made it into something it wasn't." "What was it?" "An old wound that doesn't know it's healed." A pause. "Nothing that touches what's between us." "Is there something between us?" I asked, quietly. "Honestly. Something real and defined, and something I'm allowed to hold on to?" Another silence. "Come over," she said. "Elena, please." The word clearly cost her. "Come over." I went. She opened the door herself, which in 7 weeks had only happened twice. She looked, for the first time since I had known her, slightly undone. Not dramatically, just around the edges. She said, standing in the doorway, "I have kept everyone at a specific distance for a long time because distance is controllable and people are not, and I have been burned enough times that I built the distance into my architecture. And then you showed up and told the most transparent lie I had ever witnessed, and I should have walked away." "Why didn't you?" I said. "Because you looked at me like I was a person," she said. "Not a name, not an asset, not a threat or a resource or an opportunity, just a person." Her voice was steady, but her hands were not. I had forgotten what that felt like. I crossed the threshold. I took her hands. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. "I'll get it wrong again." "Yes." I looked at her. "So will I. That's not the question. The question is whether we get it wrong together and figure it out, or whether we don't try." Her hands tightened around mine. "I want to try," she said. I had never heard anything so honest come out of that careful, controlled mouth. "Then we try," I said. She pulled me inside, and the door closed behind us. And whatever we were building, it was ours, messy and real and ours. I thought the hard part was over. I had not yet learned that with Elena Vasquez, the hard parts had a way of announcing themselves only after you were already in the middle of them. Chapter 7. The Lowest Point. 2 weeks of something real. 2 weeks of learning each other without the scaffolding of performance. Of mornings in her kitchen when she made coffee with the focused concentration she applied to everything, and handed me mine without asking how I took it because she already knew. Of evenings working in the same space with the particular comfortable silence of 2 people who have agreed to exist near each other without effort. Of understanding what it felt like to be chosen. Actually chosen. Not by default, not by circumstance, but deliberately. And then Aria came back. Not in a photograph this time, in person. At the restaurant where Elena and I were having dinner, a Friday night, unremarkable and gentle and ours. Arya sat down at the bar and looked across the room and found Elena with her eyes like she knew where to find her in any crowd, which maybe she did. And Elena saw her, and her whole body went slightly still in the way it did when she was managing something. I watched it happen. Arya didn't approach. She just sat at the bar and had her drink and looked occasionally. And Elena spent the rest of dinner present but not present. Some part of her anchored to some memory I wasn't part of and couldn't access. I didn't say anything that night. I said it the next morning. Who was she to you? Elena set down her coffee cup. The last person I let in, she said, before I decided not to do that anymore. What happened? A long silence. She chose her career over what we had, which was her right. But the way she did it, she stopped. She made me feel like I had been something she used rather than someone she loved. I looked at her, and now she's back. She reached out. She says she made a mistake. Elena's voice was flat. She wants to talk. Are you going to? The longest silence. I don't know, she said. That was honest. I gave her the credit for the honesty. But I went home that day and sat in the quiet of my apartment and felt the specific chill of not knowing if you are enough. Not because you have evidence that you aren't, but because the person you love is looking at the ghost of something old and you cannot tell what they see in it. I called Priya. I didn't tell her about Elena, not the real story, but I told her enough. That I was scared, that I had let myself care more than I'd planned, that I didn't know how to hold on to something without gripping so hard it broke. Priya said, "The question isn't whether she'll choose the ghost. The question is whether you trust what you've built enough to let her work it out." I stared at the ceiling. What if she chooses the ghost? Then you'll survive it, Priya said. You survived Marcus. You survived worse, but Mia... Her voice softened. Don't walk away from this because you're afraid of what might happen. Walk toward it. See what actually does. I stayed in my apartment for 2 days. On the 3rd day, Elena texted. I need to see you. My heart did the thing. I went. Chapter 8. The Confession. She was standing at the window when I got there. The city was bright behind her, afternoon light turning everything sharp and clear. And she turned when she heard me come in, and the look on her face was something I hadn't seen before on her, not in any of its variations. It was stripped down, past all the control and all the management and all the careful architecture she had spent 15 years constructing around herself. She looked like someone who had made a decision that cost them something. I talked to Arya, she said. I waited. She said what I expected her to say, that she was wrong, that she missed me, that what we had was worth something. Elena looked at me. And I sat there listening to her, and I kept thinking about a woman who walked into my life by accident and told the worst lie I have ever witnessed, and somehow made me remember who I was before I decided to stop being reachable. My throat was very tight. I told her no, Elena said. The 2 words landed in my chest like something settling into place. Elena, I need to say this. She crossed the room. She stopped in front of me, close enough that I could see the exact line of tension in her jaw. I have spent a very long time being controlled and precise and in charge of every variable, And you have spent 2 months completely refusing to behave like a variable. You say what you mean. You push back. You show up and you see me, and you don't let me disappear into the role I play for everyone else. She reached up and took my face in her hands. I don't know how to do this perfectly, she said. I'm going to get it wrong. I know, I said. But I want to do it. I want to do it with you. For real. No more arrangement, no more performance, just this. I covered her hands with mine. Just this, I said. She kissed me. Not like the first time, which had been careful and questioning. This was something decided, something that had moved past the question stage entirely and arrived at the part where you already know the answer, and you are simply finally saying it out loud with everything you have. When we pulled apart, she rested her forehead against mine and said, very quietly, with a breath in her voice that I had never heard before, I think I've been falling in love with you since that first Friday, when you walked in and sat down and told me you had rules. I laughed, actual laughter. It surprised both of us. My rules, I said. Your rules. And the smile that crossed her face was the one I knew was only for me, the small and real one, the one she couldn't manufacture. They were the first thing you gave me that I wasn't expecting. I have a lot of unexpected things left, I said. Good, she said. And she meant it. And I held on to that meaning with both hands and every part of me that knew how to hold something worth keeping. Chapter 9. What We Became. Priya found out on a Tuesday. Not because I told her, though I was building toward it. She showed up at my apartment unannounced, the way Priya did when she had reached her limit of patient waiting, and walked in to find Elena sitting at my kitchen table looking at documents while I translated something complicated from French at the counter, and the two of us existing in that comfortable shared silence that had become as natural as breathing. Priya stood in the doorway for approximately 4 seconds. Then she looked at me. Then she looked at Elena. Then she said to Elena with great dignity, I need to know that she was the one who started it. Elena looked at her, then at me, then with a specific small smile. She lied first. Priya pointed at me. I knew it. She stayed for dinner. Elena made her version of comfortable, which meant she ordered food from a restaurant that didn't take public reservations, and asked Priya very direct questions about her work and her life, and listened to the answers with that absolute attention that made people feel like the most important person in the room. Priya was not immune to this. By the end of the evening, she was telling Elena things she hadn't told me. When Elena stepped out to take a call, Priya looked at me across the table and said in a very low voice, Mia, she looks at you. I know. No, I mean, Priya shook her head. The whole evening, every time you moved or spoke or did anything, she tracked it. Not possessively, like you're the point of orientation. Like you're her north. I looked down at the table. Mia? Priya's voice was gentle. How long have you loved her? Since about week 3, I said quietly. I think. Are you happy? I thought about it. The real answer, not the easy one. Yes, I said. Genuinely. For the first time in a long time. Good. Priya nodded once, satisfied, like a case had been closed. She better know what she has. She does, said Elena from the doorway. Priya did not even have the grace to look embarrassed. The months that followed were what I came to think of as the education. Learning what it meant to be with someone who was used to controlling everything and was actively unlearning that instinct with me. Learning how she communicated what she needed in the specific language of someone who had long ago decided needing things was a vulnerability, and how to hear it even when it came disguised as something else. Learning that I could be known and still be chosen. That the things I thought made me difficult, my stubbornness, my loudness, the way I changed my mind and said so, the way I pushed back, these were not things she was tolerating. They were things she was specifically grateful for, because they meant she couldn't disappear inside the relationship the way she had disappeared inside other things. I needed that too, more than I had known. Marcus and Sophia got engaged in the spring. Priya sent me the announcement as a meme with no context. I showed it to Elena over breakfast. She looked at it and said simply, "Good, he's out of the way." I loved her so much in that moment it was almost unreasonable. "You know he wasn't really in the way," I said. "I know." She handed my phone back. "But he thought he was, and now he knows he isn't." She picked up her coffee. "Closure for everyone." That was Elena. Efficient, precise, secretly a little bit petty on my behalf. I would not have changed a single thing. Chapter 10. Epilogue. 1 year later. The lie lasted exactly 4 days. That's how long it took, from the night at the bar to the first dinner, for Elena to look at me and say what she eventually said that Sunday on the terrace, that I made her want to be wrong about herself. 4 days. Which means the lie had already stopped being the point almost before it started. I think about that sometimes. How the thing I said in a moment of panic to protect my pride turned out to be the most accidentally honest thing I had ever said. She was my girlfriend. She just didn't know it yet. Neither did I. We moved in together in the fall. Her place because it made logical sense, because my apartment could fit inside her living room, and because I had been half living there for months anyway. I brought my things over in stages, the way you do when you want to be sure you're not making something permanent out of something temporary. And then one day, I realized I had brought everything without noticing, and there was nothing left in my old apartment that was mine. She had made space for all of it, methodically. A drawer here, a shelf there, a place for the particular mess that comes with being a person who works in multiple languages simultaneously and collects dictionaries the way other people collect regrets. She made space for me. That is the thing I think about most. A woman who had built herself into something controlled and precise and deliberately distant, who had made architecture out of the decision not to let people close, made space for me. Not because I was easy, because I was worth it. She told me so, once, in the specific, understated way she said the things that mattered. A Saturday morning, coffee, the city doing its permanent bright sprawl below the windows. She said, not looking up from what she was reading, "I'm glad you were a bad liar." I said, "I wasn't that bad." She looked up, the smile, mine, only ever mine. "You were terrible," she said. "It was the most obvious lie I have ever been told. I saw it in your face before the words were out." I stared at her. "Then why did you play along?" She went back to her reading. "Because," she said, calm, like it was obvious, like it was the simplest thing in the world. "I wanted to see what you would do." I threw a pillow at her. She caught it without looking. And I sat there in the particular light of a Saturday morning, in the home we had made together, in the life I had not planned and could not have imagined, with the woman I had lied my way into loving and been telling nothing but the truth to ever since. And I thought, not for the first time, not for the last time, that the best things I had ever gotten in my life had arrived in the wrong packaging. Panicked lies, wrong bars, stupid pride. And a woman with winter in her chest who turned out to be the warmest thing I had ever found. I would not change a single second of it, not one.